It looks like we're live. So should we just dive right into it then?
Let's go ahead. Yeah.
All right, cool. So today we're going to be diving into welcome sequence strategies and also email deliverability hacks that you can implement within the welcome sequence to ensure that you're building know, like, and trust with your subscribers better, and also ensuring that your emails are more likely to land in the primary inbox. So, Brad, with any specific thing you want to start with there, or should we just go into it?
Maybe we start broad and we just talk about real quick what a welcome sequence is. I know it's kind of, most people can probably guess what that is, but
Yeah.
um, just talk about broadly what it is. So just so we have the groundwork laid. So welcome sequence, basically, if someone gets on your list from like your opt-in, your lead magnet or incentive or whatever it is, it's the first sequence that they get. It's welcoming them to the brand, to the list, and delivering the thing you promised them, ebook, discount, whatever it is. And then the rest of the flow, I mean, a lot of brands only do one email, which is a bit of a mistake. Like, you want to do way more than that. But the rest of the flow is, telling them about the brand and used in the neutral sense, indoctrinating them into your brand and showing them your world, and ideally, getting that first sale as soon as possible, because that's the whole point of, email marketing is to, you start selling. I mean, if it's for profit, you start selling right away. I just worked with a nonprofit, and we did not start selling them on donating right away because it's nonprofits.
Yeah.
People are a little more skittish about hard sales pushes and that. But either way, that's the goal, is to get them into your brand and get them familiar with who you are and why you're different, and getting them to make that first purchase. So that's a welcome
Yeah.
sequence. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, because this is something that I do differently depending on the brand I'm writing for, company, whatever. What I try to sell in my welcome sequence isn't always necessarily the same as a tripwire offer, which a lot of people don't even think about. Like, I've mentioned that in the past. Like, the easiest way to start making money right away with your email list is, like, on the thank you page, have a tripwire offer, like a one time offer that people are never going to see ever again. And also make sure that it's like you ensure that happens, right? Like, a lot of ESPs, what they will allow you to do is make it so that people can re-opt into your list, but that page doesn't come up again, right? Because the last thing you want to do is to provide a one-time offer on your thank you page, and then people don't opt for that offer, but all they have to do is re-opt into your list, and then the thank you page comes up again, right? So the last thing you want to do is allow people to do that. Make it so that it's actually a one-time offer. They're never going to see it again. Reiterate that. But something I also like to do is sell something similar, usually right in the welcome email. Do you do anything different, Bradley, or is that kind of the same flow you do if you go that route?
Well, that's an interesting technique. I'd like to actually now think about it, apply to the e-com world. Obviously, I know that's
Yeah.
more common. I know I'm working on a funnel that would do that. It somewhere along the lines in what's it called, info products. That's more common because it's more of a direct response kind of thing. In e-com, that's not. But now that I think about it, that could be you deliver the incentive right away. Like
Yeah.
right there, or the incentive is basically a one-time offer. But traditionally, with welcome sequences with e-com, especially since I don't know, there's something about it where it feels like the way I do it is they get on the list, and then it's welcome, to the list, and then there's like fairly standard, like showing them around, problem solution emails, product recommendation emails, uh,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. So there's probably a way to do what you described for ecom as well, but you know,
Yeah.
it's similar concept in that it's showing them around the brand and getting them familiar with the brand, which is important even if they do not buy right away. And you still, you still want to establish a relationship early. And when done right, when they do buy, I like to say welcome sequence actually sets the stage for good retention, customer
Yes.
retention, because it's getting part of customer retention is having customers that would want to stick around in the first place, right? Like it's easier to keep
Yeah.
customers on. So the welcome sequence, from a retention point of view, it screens out the people who would not be necessarily a good fit as well. Like, I mean, if they buy, that's cool. But the people who go, yes, they are speaking my language. I want to support them, not just because the product's good, but because I like this brand. I've seen a few good examples. I've broken down an example of one of those emails on my blog a long time ago, but it gets you to go, yes, I like this brand. I want to buy that from this brand because they're not just the product, but the mission as well. And I'm, they are the type of, or I am the type of person that fits well with that brand. And, that plus a good customer or good like front end experience means better retention, easier time retaining them later once they've already purchased.
Yeah, awesome. I do something very similar. The approach, like a lot of the welcome sequences that I've written are mostly for the info publishing space or coaching. I haven't like the only ecom business I ever wrote for was my own. That like the that's actually how I got started in all this stuff in the first place. I used to own a drop shipping Amazon business. And the way I would get people on my email list was I used my Amazon product as like a loss leader, but used a what they call a ride along with a QR code on it that gave away like a free ebook. This is going back like 6 years ago, so like ebooks were like actual tangible value back in the day. So they would opt in to get that ebook, and then I had them on my email list. So the whole point of using Amazon was just using the largest marketplace in the world to just get people on my email list. And then you're building a list of buyers, not just a list of freebie seekers and tire kickers, right? So that was the only time I ever wrote for ecom. So like what I'm doing, what I do in most cases might still work, but usually I start off with a welcome email. That's pretty standard. I always ensure that within the first 2 to 3 sentences, so that it's like, I always write geared towards, did somebody likely opt in from their phone, right? Like if they have to do a thumb flick to click to download the lead magnet, I found that decreased consumption of the lead magnet by more than 50%. So what I do is within the first sentence, I usually say, hey, thanks for grabbing whatever the lead magnet is. The lead magnet title is hyperlinked to the lead magnet. You will increase your click-through rates on your welcome email by like 200% just by doing that alone. If people do not need to scroll, they just like open, click, done. Like your lead magnet consumption will be that much better. Then what I do is I reiterate the fact that they made a good decision, that they opted in, why it's important to them, why they should listen to me, what to look forward to. And then also what I like to do is iterate what to expect, right? Because if you're going to be emailing once a week, tell people it's once a week on such and such day at such and such time. If it's 3 times a week, let people know. If it's daily, let them know. If you're going to be selling, let them know. And then also, like, if you tend to be a little bit more vulgar, use your fairly share polarizing topics or opinions like I usually do. Iterate that, like tell people, right? Because the last thing you want to do is like make people upset, right? Because I've had people reply to my emails like months down the road and they're like, hey, I don't really agree with this and that. And they're trying to argue with me. And all I do is I copy the section of my welcome email and be like, hey, remember when you opted in, this got sent to your inbox? And I said, hey, if you're not happy with this, I'll respond, but like, I'm not going to sit here and argue with you. So if you want, I could unsubscribe you, or you could just stick around. And people are usually like, no. I just wanted to share your opinion. I was like, I didn't really ask for it. But not saying you shouldn't talk to your people. Like if it's a intelligent conversation, yes, 100%. But most of the time when people want to share a negative comment, it's because they're just trying to bait you for whatever reason, because they got nothing else better to do, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Because like we were talking about email deliverability, if people are replying to your emails, that's a good thing, because engagement's engagement, whether it's negative or positive, as long as they're not hitting the spam button. Google doesn't care. Your emails are more likely to hit the primary inbox, which then brings me to my next point on the welcome email. Tell people to reply. Tell them, hey, just because of whatever issues, email land, You can't always ensure that people are going to get your emails in the primary inbox, sometimes in the promo, junk, whatever. And then what I also like to do is incentivize the reply. Be like, hey, if you can, reply to this email for this such and such reason. And if you do, I'll even throw in a free gift. And then usually what I do is I like bold that, make it like a header text so it's a little bit bigger so that even if people are like scrolling really fast, they still see it. And then what I do is I share with them something that's going to make the lead magnet um, work bigger, faster, stronger kind of thing, right? Like the lead magnet's supposed to give them a quick win, but the incentivized gift that I'm going to provide is just going to make it that much better. But then usually what I share is a Google Doc that's just going to allow them to do that. And in the PS, I then share what I was going to give them as a one-time offer on the thank you page, but at a higher price, right? Because now I've anchored them, right? Because now they saw the one-time offer. If they said no, whatever, but now they get a second chance, which then I'm reiterating the fact that, hey, this was actually, in fact, a one-time offer, right? So, and then like you're always offering help, right? So they get that, and yeah, you're pitching something, but it's like after you've tried to help them. So that's what I usually do in the welcome email. And then I always have a follow-up email, usually 26 minutes to 6 hours later. I found 26 minutes works good, like 26 minutes to about 45 minutes after the initial opt-in from the welcome email. If they're coming from warm traffic, specifically from your social media, you did a list swap, or they know you personally for whatever reason, they're more likely to reply to that email because it comes off as like, hey, like this person probably just ripped this off quick. They sent it to me, I'm going to reply, because that's the whole point of that, is basically get people to reply to that email. And then also be like, hey, I wanted to make sure that you got the lead magnet, in which case I then hyperlink the title of the lead magnet again, and then again in the PS. And the whole point of that is just to get people to reply, or even ask them a question, right? Not necessarily, hey, did you get this? But like, hey, thanks for joining my list. What made you join? Talk about the transformation they're looking for, the problem they're trying to solve. Like these are things that you kind of need to know. We won't get into like Eugene Schwartz's stages of awareness, but the more you're aware of where they are in their journey, the better the question you can ask, right? If they opt in for said lead magnet, are they problem aware, solution aware, product aware, whatever, right? And then you could ask a question iterating from that to get better information, which then helps you sell better in future copy, because now you're getting the actual verbiage that people use to describe those said problems and what they're looking for. But you could also send that email specifically if you're using cold traffic sources. I find 4 to 6 hours later works better. 4 is probably the best. I find that 4 works the best because if you send it 6 hours later, sometimes it goes into the next day and the people are sleeping, right? Like what if they opted into your list at like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. their time, right? Or they're just like a midnight scroller, right? So that's the whole point of that. And then the second email is usually something like a hero story, usually your own personal, because I find usually if somebody's doing coaching or info publishing in any manner, usually the whole reason they're selling an offer is because they're trying to help people get the transformation that they provided for themselves, right? Like they created a system. So your hero story should be very, like you mentioned, product, agitate, solution kind of email, right? That's the whole point of this email. And then the whole purpose of that is basically to sell whatever offer you're trying to sell. And then there's a sequence of other emails that I send thereafter, which is usually like myth busting emails, questions like one that we've talked about before that I know really works really well is voice a customer. Like take a question you get asked often and use it as like a quoted text in your subject line. And even like emotional stories, like if people have like testimonials and stuff like that, the great transformations that you've provided with whatever your offer is that you sell. But what a lot of people do wrong is people assume that what you sell or what you're trying to sell isn't garbage, right? So it's like it's assumed you're probably going to have social proof, especially if you're selling. So social proof for the sake of social proof, in my opinion, does nothing. I've taken testimonials out of my sales pages for my own brand, and I found it made no difference. I actually found that it helped get people through the copy faster, and just buy. Because like I actually legitimately had people ask for me to make my sales pages shorter so that they could get to the buy button faster, right? Um, but that's because when you're doing email, right, a lot of the times, and you probably know this too, Brad, is it's email that's doing the selling, especially all the preemptive buildup if you're doing like a launch properly. So like the sales page is just there for the people who are like a little bit colder or just not really that dead set on getting it yet. And I don't think testimonials necessarily help with that. But the only time they do is if the transformation that that person got helps overcome a objection somebody has, right? Like your testimonials should be the mirrored opposite version of whatever objection they have, right? So like I wasn't about to buy this offer because of said objection, but this happened. If it's something along the lines of that, then that's going to definitely help, and that's helps in your emails. But if it's just like, hey, such and such person bought this and they got this, buy my shit, I don't necessarily think those work as well anymore, especially in today's market when people use fake AI avatars now as their as their testimonials. I actually came across an ad that was clearly AI written the other day and AI generated, and it's like a video of a guy talking about like using the offer, and it's like this couldn't be any more fake. Like I was completely turned off by that. I was like, you're not even a real person, what do you mean you used it? So this fake offer that was created by AI that's now trying to sell me using AI, like maybe it is a legit thing, but like where is your market in sophistication? Like I would say us being marketers, we're fairly uh, sophisticated. Like I need to tell my dad all the time when he's on YouTube and he's watching stuff, getting angry at some video Trump's, and I was like, Dad, this isn't even AI. This isn't real, man. It's AI, right? But yeah, that's the flow I typically take. Basically, take what you would do vertically with a sales letter, turn it horizontal, and then each section that you would write as a sales page should become an individual email and follow that succession. And then that's actually how I run my promos too. But if you write a welcome sequence in that manner, but not so pushy and using like the pitches and the PS and then a little bit more direct towards the end, like I find that works best.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like I was saying, it sounds like that's a fairly creative approach to doing that. Like especially with the PS and the offer and everything like that, and having the like the one time offer immediately after the sign up, not the purchase, the sign up.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. Those are some interesting techniques. I don't see a lot in ecom. I see, ecom, and this is the way I do it because there are repeatable, like I'm a very systematic thinker. There are very repeatable, systematized ways of doing the flows, especially once you see so many, you're like, okay, there are certain underlying principles for all the
Yeah.
flows. Like I'm not going to like share my entire methodology for how I do them, but like I have a specific like SOP for how I do welcome flows, for example, and it has generally the same types of emails in it. Obviously, those change depending on the brand voice, products. Sometimes emails have to be not just slightly tweaked, but like modified entirely if there's certain capabilities the brand doesn't have, or if it's like, there's an email that's meant for multi-product brands, but some brands only have one product, or like two products maybe, but one is front end, one is the back end. And so, but besides that though, it's like fairly standard. And I do some of the same things that you said you do. Like I do try to encourage replies early on. You do want to make sure that if you're delivering something, it's delivered above the fold. So when
Yes.
they
Yeah.
open the email, they don't have to do any scrolling or any thumb scrolling or anything like that
Yeah.
to get it. You want to make sure that it's right there ASAP, because in many cases, that's why they're opening the email. If they have to look for it at all, they're like, I don't care, close, right? So when it comes to, like if it's like a discount or something like that, like for ecom brands, it'll be discount, shop now button, boom. Because a lot of people just want to use that discount and shop now. If
Yeah.
yeah, it's a discount, but if you get an immediate sale because of that, whereas before they were like skeptical, it's like sure, you take that. You can always make up that on the back end with other things. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, in ecom, from what I've seen, it's mostly many of the same concepts. Where like the first email is doing all the expectation setting, and in terms of what types of things they'll hear, and how often they'll hear from you and those kinds of things. But then there's a lot of other things I like to cover in welcome sequences. I think I mentioned a few earlier, like you want an origin story, for the brand, for the founder, or I guess both. They're kind of both crammed into one
Yeah.
email. You want product recommendations. Like I think of it like I think Chris Wojciechowski put it this way: a welcome sequence can almost be like a sales letter, kind of like the whole thing is almost like each email is addressing a different thing. So it's like, what products do I buy? Well, there's a email where you recommend your top few products for new people or whatever. There's maybe there's an email like the origin story email. In every sales letter, there's a what well, who am I? I'm blah blah blah. I've done blah 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 blah. That's kind of like the origin story email. There's there's an email where you just answer a bunch of like FAQs. You just answer a bunch of questions, right? And so each email is like doing a different thing. And the goal with that is that you have a particular persona. Obviously, you might have some sub personas as well. But even if you have like you have a target customer and most of your customers fit that, there's still like different things are going to get different people to convert. So someone might just want to. Someone might hear the origin story and be like, I went through that same problem. I've had that same pain. I trust you. They buy. Someone else might be like less attached to that and just kind of like have like a passing interest in the product, or maybe just interest in the product in general. And then they're just like, I have questions about like, I don't know, the ingredient sourcing or something like that. Well, boom, you answer that in another email later. And so each of the emails addresses like a different thing. And I like the point you make about using testimonials and proof. Some people just try to like, I call it like a testimonial barrage, and you can do a testimonial barrage correctly, but it's an email where it's not like a story it's not like a storymonial. It's just, here's what a bunch of people say, boom, boom, but people will just random testimonials. And usually I have like lots of brand research in front of me and stuff. I go, okay, what are the top objections people have at this stage or whatever to buying? And then I go, okay, let's find a testimonial that addresses that one. And it doesn't even necessarily have to say like, I was skeptical. And then, although there are people who have nice long testimonials like that, it could just be like, someone could just be like, well, I love how all the ingredients are all natural, blah, 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 blah. And that's, that could be an objection for someone like in the supplement space. So you drop that in there and they buy. Or maybe it's I'm going to keep using the supplement example. Maybe it's like a protein powder and it's like most protein powders taste bad or something like that. And someone's like, well, I want this protein powder, but this is going to taste gross. And then there's like you have a testimonial that's like, I love how the flavor is so delicious. It reminds me of blah, 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 blah. You have a testimonial like that. You drop that in there and it looks completely natural. You've like specifically engineered the proof elements, the social proof elements to address all the key objections. That's how I always pick testimonials. I'm always looking for, especially in a welcome sequence, what stops a person initially from buying the first product. And, it's kind of like, it's the same thing as like what some other emails are doing, but from a social proof standpoint. What are the things that keep them from buying? And can we find things that other people have said about the product that can overcome that? And that I found that that's a pretty good email to have in the welcome sequence as well. Just like, overcoming objections with proof.
Yeah, exactly. I forget her name, but she was in Copy Chief with us back in the day. And she wrote it was either an article or a video about the 4 different buyer types. And she related them to The Simpsons. Right? Do you remember that or no?
I don't think so.
Okay, so you typically have 4 buyer types on your list, right? You got the hyper buyers, which are the Homer Simpsons. They see something they want, and that's why whenever I write a promo, which is very similar to my welcome sequence, right? So essentially that's the whole point of your one-time offer, the PS in a welcome sequence or in your welcome email. Because that's something I can't remember if I mentioned that already, but that's something I do is your high ticket offer. Right. And that's actually the number one thing you should be selling in your welcome sequence in the first place is what's your high ticket offer, right? Like the whole point of your lead magnet is to sell people on the idea of working with you and to give them a quick win, right? At least in the info publishing and coaching space, right? The space that I've written the most in is to give them a taste of what it's like to work with you, give them a quick win, but also if they get that quick win or if they're willing to hire you already, have in your PS in the actual welcome email itself, hey, by the way, if you want blah, 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 check this out. And then a link, right? So that's like your high ticket offer, right? And that's for your hyper buyers, right? Because that's not necessarily the that's like a large segment of your list, but there's going to be like 1 to 3% of the people who join your list that are ready to just buy off you today, right? So if you do not make an offer in your welcome email, you are leaving money on the table. And those are your Homer Simpsons, right? Those are the people that they're ready to buy. It sounds cool. Okay, cool. This sounds like something I'm going to do. They hit the buy button, right? And then you have your Bart Simpsons, right? They're not as easily persuaded as the Homer Simpsons. Sometimes it takes a welcome email or two, but that's the whole point of your origin story slash hero story slash problem agitate solution, right? It's like, hey, I've experienced that before too. You said it in the language. This is mirroring what I deal with every day. This sounds interesting. Boom, right? They buy. And then you have your Lisa Simpsons, right? They're your logical type. They're the ones that, hey, you know what? Like this all sounds cool. I've heard this before, or I've been burned on this before. I call bullshit, right? And that's what your testimonials take care of, or even like your myth busting slash paradigm shift emails, right? So it's like take them where they are now, show them proof of why their thought process is wrong. Never tell somebody's wrong. You got to prove it through stories and say it very eloquently, but then it's to persuade them, right? And then you have your skeptical buyers, which are your Marge Simpsons, the ones that go, I've heard that. Fuck you. I'm not going to buy. And that's the whole point of like that whole process is to guide them through that whole sequence and then get them to buy. So if you could think about those 4 buyer types and how you can appeal to them through your entire welcome sequence or even anything that you're writing or creating. Sales page works the same way, except you're doing it vertically, not horizontally or sideways, right? Because you mentioned Chris Orzakowski, and the way he refers it to is the sideways sales letter. And he got that from Jeff Walker of Product Launch Formula, because if I remember correctly, Chris O was Jeff Walker's copywriter for a while with Angie Coley, right? That whole copywriting team, which are all like amazing copywriters and all amazing marketers just on their own. And that's actually straight from Jeff Walker's book and his courses, The Product Launch Formula. And Chris does it the same way because it works, right? Like take people where they are now and then transition them through what they need to know to get them to buy, right? And you could do that through your email campaign list or sequence, whatever, but also done through your sales letter. It's just done differently, right? Different medium, same message, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I blinked for a second what I was about to mention or what I was about to talk about. So actually, I had to refresh myself because I wrote an article a while ago about welcome sequence mistakes. I figured this is a good time to
Yeah.
maybe share a few things, I guess, framed as what not to do, and then what you should do, since that's the way my article is framed. So a few things with the welcome sequence. I said at the beginning of our live here that I alluded to it, I guess. A lot of brands will just like not send enough emails. Like one welcome email is not enough. It's better than 0, I suppose. But I've actually, I swear I've opted in before to some brands lists and got no welcome email. Now maybe it just went to spam or trash or promo and I couldn't find it, which is also a problem. If I am looking for it and I can't find it, even though it did send, well, there might be something else that needs to be fixed there, like the sender name or email or whatever. But the point is, you need more than one email. You need more. I like to do like my SOP, just as a little behind the scenes, has 8 emails. Now I don't know. Sometimes I use only 6 of those. Sometimes I add more depending on. I actually worked, I think, with Chris Orzakowski on a brand that had 20 welcome emails because the first 10 were about the brand in various things with some product recs mixed in, and then the second 10 were all just featuring a product, featuring a product, featuring a product. Like each email was featuring a product, and they're very high. It was I can't really say what, but it was like very high quality, kind of heritage, handmade kind of thing. So each one kind of deserved its own email, anyways. But not sending enough emails is a big mistake because people might just miss the first 2 or 3 emails. People might not be persuaded by the first 2 or 3 emails. They might not have seen that thing that they need to see, like what I was talking about earlier. They might not have had their particular objection. They might be skeptical about the sourcing of the ingredients if it's a supplement, but you haven't necessarily talked about that yet. Or I don't know, how the return policy, even maybe you haven't talked about that yet. It could be small things like that, or it could be bigger things, but you want to send more than like 3 emails is like barely, almost not even bare minimum. Like 5 is like bare minimum because like that's like the bare minimum you need to cover like a lot of the major types of objections or things you need to cover. And then on top of that, and I just helped, or I'm helping a brand right now or a nonprofit rebuild theirs, although it was in draft mode. So I don't think it was ever actually live, but waiting too long between the emails. This brand wanted to wait like 2 to 3 days between emails. And it's understandable again, because it's a nonprofit, but even then it's like, if you're not aggressively selling them, like I like to do now, Pete, you said there's the one that you send a few hours later to like follow up and make sure that, that's helps enhance deliverability and get the engagement going. But like, besides that, I do no more than a day between every email. Also, you want to, try to make sure that they sent, if they opt in at like, 11 p.m., you may want to set a little filter so that the next one sends like 8 a.m. the next available day, or 10 a.m. So they're not getting them all at 11 p.m. That might not be ideal, but waiting too long between emails, don't want to do that either, because you want to strike while the iron's hot, basically.
Yeah.
And then while you're doing that, clear offers. Make the offer should be clear in the email. Like if it's an incentive, like if you're giving a discount, like from the e-commerce world, discount code, the discount amount, how to use it, what it applies to, and the benefit as well. I mean, with the discount, they save money, but all that stuff should be very clear. Remember, like we like to say very nicely, people aren't, people are kind of stupid sometimes when they're shopping. They're not, memory of a goldfish. You have to handhold them through it. Some of us act that way sometimes as customers, I'm sure, so it's not super insulting to say that. I know I act that way. I've been frustrated with customer service, and then I find out I was the stupid one because the answer was really obvious. So I know I sometimes fall into that bucket too, but sell something, or make them take some action in every email, even if it's just saying like, hey, reply to this email to make sure whatever, right? In many cases, like with ecom, with info products, info publishing, it's probably going to be an actual paid offer. Like I said, with the nonprofit, the first 3 emails of the welcome sequence are like, hey, go here to learn more about us. Hey, go here for, we're not asking them for the dono until like, I think 4 emails in. So, but we're getting them to do things, to engage with the brand, to get deeper into the brand, and, things that are free, but still get them, like those micro commitments that Cialdini talks about. They are clicking through, they're reading about things, they're getting more ingrained into the brand. So I know I'm not going to like cover in detail every email in a welcome sequence, and they can vary person to person. But like I said, you should always tell your story in welcome sequences. Some people like to do it in the very first email. Some people like to do it as its own email, like the next day, or email 2 or something like that. But you do want to tell your own story, because a lot of businesses, especially like the smaller, like founder-led ones, the ones that are like the founders club, like they started it because they specifically had a problem, and then they started their business because they developed a product or a process or something that solved that problem. And that means that they are literally the market. And so if they just tell their story, that's going to connect with a bunch of other people, right? Like, I don't know, like if I can't think of like any off the top of my head, but like, I think you know what I mean. Like, like I worked with a brand once that they developed the products that they sold because it's a what's it called? Animal-based, like health snacks, these kinds of things. They developed the products because they themselves struggle with all these chronic health conditions, and they found by changing their diet and all these things, it helped heal those chronic conditions. And so they started creating products that made that kind of food, or those kinds of products, easier to access, like so they could be mass produced and sold. So like a lot of their audience is going to resonate that with. So just telling your story, people are going to be like, yes, I have that same problem, right? And so a few more things I think we talked about: setting expectations. Again, what you'll talk about in the emails, how often approximately they'll get emails, letting them know they can, letting them know that you will be selling. Some people get on the list and they're like, some people are just naturally super averse to being sold to. But let them know that you're doing that. Just set the expectation. So that'll weed some people out right away who you don't want on your list. And so people who move on are more likely to want that kind of stuff. And if they don't want that kind of stuff and they get mad at you, Pete, like you said, you can be like, hey, look, I told you you'd be getting this stuff. I mean, that's not on me. I sent you this email, and you hopefully
signed up for it.
Yeah, exactly. So
I told you what's going to happen.
Yeah. So, and then I earlier also said the word indoctrination. That technically just means I have the in front of me right here. So in and docere from Latin, it means to teach, like to teach
Yeah.
into. So like to
Yeah.
install your worldview into them. That I mean,
Yeah.
technically, indoctrination in the bad sense. That's what you're doing too. It's just it's used always
Yeah.
as a pure negative term. But if I am teaching you my beliefs, I'm showing you why my beliefs are correct or trying to persuade you, I'm technically indoctrinating you. Even if my belief is something that like most people would agree is good, it's like that's still indoctrination in the technical sense. So you want to be doing that as well. And that'll come about in your origin story. It'll weave its way throughout the rest of your emails and all that kind of stuff. So that's the welcome flow being almost like a retention flow. If you do that right, people will want to stick around for the long term because they believe in the same mission and values that you do. And then finally, one other thing is, especially if it's like something like a discount, you want to use urgency and deadlines and things like that. You want to make sure that you need to create that urgency. Some people just will not buy, and like that's like an objection as well. Why do I need to do it now? Right? Then
Yeah.
urgency. Well, if you want the discount that I gave you, well, you need to do it now. Now there might not be a discount necessarily. In that case, the urgency, you don't want to create some bullshit like fake scarcity or anything like that. Like you don't the example is you don't have a limited number of copies of your ebook. Like it's an ebook, it's electronic, right? It's unlimited. But you could say by not taking action now, by not buying the product, you'll continue to have XYZ problem. You won't be able you can paint a picture of what life is like if they don't solve the problem, and then what life is
Cost
like.
of inaction.
Yeah, exactly. The cost of it, actually, the opportunity cost, kind of. If you don't get this supplement now, you continue to struggle with, I don't know, like feeling tired in the gym or something like that. And you never progress, and you lose motivation, you stop going, and then you get fat. I don't know, like something like that. Whereas if you do get it, you get all that back, and et cetera, et cetera. So that urgency is like you only have a limited. Ultimately, we all have a limited amount of time on this earth, right? So like if they don't act now, that's time that they're wasting not solving their problem. So you don't have to do discounts in your welcome sequence at all. Or if you don't have like a discount, if you just have given them a free ebook or something, you don't have to make up some fake stuff. You can just twist the knife of like why not acting now is hurting them, basically. So those are a bunch of things. I usually see a lot of these, a few of these mistakes, at least with a lot of clients, and obviously I help fix them. But those are some of the basics you want to avoid or fix or implement, I guess, to make sure that your welcome sequence is going well. And honestly, getting a decent welcome sequence in place, if you don't have one at all, or if you just have like one email, like it doesn't have to be like perfect. It doesn't have to be, the world's greatest welcome sequence. It just has to kind of cover, like I said earlier, cover all the bases, cover all the objections, and just kind of have those basics of, urgency and storytelling and objection busting and some social proof, these kinds of things. And it'll do pretty well. You can always go back later and test new elements, but yeah.
And that's another thing you just mentioned that is good to do is after your welcome sequence has been running for more than 30 days, I mean more than 90 days. Look at how it's performing. Is there an email that you notice like the open rates just drop, right? Which is normal. Like the average open rate of a welcome email is only like 70-80%, right? Which is like sounds good, but like just imagine that there's 20 to 30% of the people who opt into your list because they wanted a lead magnet and they didn't even open the freaking welcome email.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of sending that follow-up email too, is just to ensure that people are getting what they signed up for, right? But something that you mentioned, which I highly agree with, is the sharing the origin story or the reason why you do what you do, like the mission, because people need something to relate to. A lot of people don't realize this, but like back in the day when you had like a faceless brand, like that's why they created the Green Giant, like back in the 1930s, right? Because people needed a person to see, right? And just doing that alone increased sales for Green Giant like corn and shit, right? Because that's not a Canadian thing. You guys have that in the US, right? Like I'm not just spitting crap here.
I don't know. Do we?
Right? Because sometimes I talk about things to my American friends and they're like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? I was like, sorry, I'm Canadian. I forget that we have like an invisible wall.
It says Minnesota, so basically Canada.
Yeah, it's like the Canadian Americans. That doesn't count. So anyways, like you need to give people like a face, a person to relate to. And that's actually something else that I've tested for the follow-up email is the subject line literally says, I made you a video dot 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 smirky emoji, right? That way people are like, it's kind of creepy. Um, so what it is, it's like a Loom video of me welcoming people, right? So rather than me sharing my story in an email, like they actually see a face. And I use that for cold traffic only because typically people are coming from warm traffic. They already know me, right? Like, especially people from Substack, they might even be watching this video right now, in the future, whatever, right? They don't need to see my face. But like somebody who came in cold, that's like one of the emails I like to share. And then like you said, use an urgency and scarcity at the end, I think is important because like nothing happens without a deadline. Like for example, if you have a goal, if you just write down what you want um to hit your goal, and you give yourself a deadline of when you're going to get it, subconsciously you're like activating the reticular activating system in your subconscious, and you're like 236% more likely to hit your goal just by doing that alone, right? So if you give yourself a deadline, or like you mentioned, making them feel the scarcity or the cost of an inaction. Like for example, I wrote, actually I mentioned earlier that I didn't write for much ecom brands, but I used to write for a lot more supplement brands back in the day when I first started. One of them was like a something that helped with blood sugar, right? Like people who are like pre-diabetic but almost diabetic, and it helped them. It was like a ketone thing, right? Like, hey, you can have energy, just add this to your coffee, this and that, whatever. And rather than writing about the benefits of taking it and all the typical stuff that you would read about like the possibilities of diabetes and all that, I found a story of a guy who this sounds bad, but I found the story of this guy who was pre-diabetic, did nothing about it. He wasn't even fat or like out of shape. Like if you looked at him, you wouldn't have guessed that he was unhealthy metabolically, but was pre-diabetic and he went impotent, and his wife ended up leaving him. So I was like, hey, you don't want that to happen to you, do you? Like I said it a little bit better in the email, but it's like, hey, like what is the worst case scenario if people don't do, like, right? So like they say, it's your moral obligation to let people know all the angles. You don't need to be as aggressive about it like I do, like I am sometimes, but like if you have something that you sell and you legitimately believe in it, and you know you're going to potentially change people's lives, yeah, of course, sell the shit out of it. You shouldn't even feel bad about doing it either, because if people are upset about that, fine, just delete them from your list. They're probably not going to buy off you anyways, and the people that do, like, they're going to thank you for doing so because you're not selling shit in the first place, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And one other thing on that, you said that story right there. I actually similarly for like the nonprofit, because again, emotion or people always emotion like em, all sales is emotions, but like, in some sense,
Yes.
but with the nonprofit, it's like a special case because it's people giving money away to do good cause things, even if it's like ultimately like, oh, I feel good or whatever. Like they're not just like buying a widget or whatever, they're giving money away. So like in that case, that's a special, an interesting case because if I remember correctly, it's either a welcome sequence or maybe it was a welcome sequence for recurring donors or one-off donors, or maybe recurring donors. I don't know, but we used a bunch of stories for that, if I remember correctly, of the things their money is actually accomplishing. It's because when it comes to nonprofits, you don't want your money to disappear into a black hole or go all into some executive's pocket, which some really, really, really big philanthropic organizations are known for that kind of thing happening. But um, in that special case, and if anyone who works for or with nonprofits or watches this, um, using stories like that a lot, like even if they're that you bring out the emotions a lot, and I don't know if dark is the right word, but like you said, that story was kind of like, this guy had this whole like train wreck, hit rock bottom kind of thing there. If you have like things like that where things get like those usually will resonate because the person donating wants to know that, their money is actually helping something, something concrete happen. And what's funny is, we had an email that's like, here's us by the numbers. We've accomplished this, XYZ of whatever accomplished, right? But what the nonprofit said and what kind of makes sense to me is that actually in some cases, like we still want to include that kind of email because it does address a type of objection. Like what's the quantitative impact of all the
Yes.
of the organization, but the individual stories, the zooming in onto one person, tends to do just as well, if not better, even though it's not like a raw number of we helped this many people. It's this one person, but it's very zoomed in, and it's because ultimately people are wired. There's a book called Wired for Story, right? Like people are wired
Yeah.
for
The
story.
best book written on that topic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Lisa Krohn.
yeah. People are wired for stories. So even in physical product e-commerce, I just had the idea pop in my head right now. I wonder if anyone has tried with like a welcome sequence. They have a welcome email, and then they just have like 8 emails that are customer story. Like each one is a customer story addressing a different thing. Someone can steal that idea if they want to. I don't know. I might refine that idea, but like
Yeah, by all
having
means, test our ideas and let us know how they work.
yeah,
It
yeah.
helps all of us, right?
If you have like a good data bank of like customer reviews or like longer like case studies or like longer testimonials that have like the before, the encountering the brand, the skepticism, what made them change their mind, what the results were, the whole all the elements of a customer story. I bet you could even do a welcome sequence that is just a bunch of those. Like you have the welcome, and then you might be like, over the next
Yeah,
several days, we're going to share with you some stories from customers who blah 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 blah, right? Or a nonprofit.
yeah,
A nonprofit could probably do that pretty well as well, like just sharing stories like that. But the point there is that stories in welcome sequences very important. Um, Origin story, obviously, but also probably could work in an entire customer story email that's just sharing, a customer that's like the as close to like the ideal story as possible that like represents the broadest swath of customers, so that more people resonate with that, and you get more people want to read those. So yeah.
yeah, man. All right. I think we beat this topic to death and probably gave away more than we meant to, as per usual. You guys are welcome. But yeah, I think we're good, bud. How about you?
Yeah, I think we covered almost everything there is to cover about welcome sequences. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think we touched on a few topics here today. We could probably riff on the next one, such as like stories. And the other thing that I do in welcome sequences that I didn't mention is always use a nested or open loop or a cliffhanger in your
Oh yeah.
emails to then future pace what's coming up next on the next one because of, and always like bold, italicize, header line that so that people see it even if they're scrolling, and then reuse that language in the subject line the next day, and you will increase your open rates and clicks just by doing that alone, because if you're teasing something that's happened next or a possible objection that they have and how you're going to get into it the next day or teach them something that they want to know, the more likely people are to engage with your welcome sequence even longer. So yeah, man.
Sweet.
Cool.
All right. See y'all, everybody.
See you guys. Thanks for coming.